So, welcome, Amber. I have got Amber here, and I'm going to ask Amber a few questions. Now, Amber is an amazing lady. She is the director of White Wolf, who are a talent and organizational advisory company. I have to read that because it's a mouthful. So, thank you for joining me, Amber. So,
Oh, you're welcome, Adele.
the subject of what we're talking about today is something that I've been dealing a lot with my coaching clients, and it is the subject of bullying in the workplace. Now, it's a subject that's really close to your heart, actually, isn't it, Amber?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's something I've witnessed and experienced firsthand myself in a couple of organisations I've worked. So yeah, quite passionate about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, could you tell me a little bit about your experience of bullying when it happened to you and how that played out for you?
Yeah, I've had it. I've experienced it on two occasions actually. Once in an earlier career when I worked for an airline and was working as an air hostess, and once in a corporate organisation. And on both occasions, it actually had a massive impact on not only my mental health but also my physical health, and outside of work as well was deeply affected. So yeah, it's not nice when it's happening to you, and you go through a series of sort of analysis and trying to work out whether it is just you, particularly when it happens again many years later. So yeah.
That's really interesting, actually. So, the next question is, was it quite obvious to you that you were being bullied, or was there an element of, am I imagining this, or is it me? That
Well,
that
no, that's
those
exactly,
thoughts that
yeah.
you can have, because from what I've been dealing with my one-to-one clients, many of them say to me, I thought I was actually going mad. I thought it was me. I thought I was being paranoid. I thought it was my self-doubt creeping in. So
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know whether it was just smack in your face and you knew, like, oh my gosh, I'm being bullied, or was it something that grew over time?
I think the best way to describe it, so the first experience I had was when I was a lot younger. So it was my first professional role.
Mm.
And I just honestly believed that that's what working was about. I just thought it was, working with a lot of women. It was very competitive industry at the time to get into an airline. So I just thought it was the set of circumstances. And I also was mindful of the fact that I was quite young.
Yeah.
And when you're quite young, you're quite naive and can sometimes be a little bit foolish and dipsy in your first role. So as you grow and evolve, you learn more and more what is acceptable and what is unacceptable in the workplace. So I'd say when my first experience, I probably didn't realize it was happening until I'd been there for 6 or 7 years and was constantly missing out on promotion and stayed at the same grade, never evolved, was working really hard, getting great reviews and great feedback, but just wasn't really going anywhere. So that was when it came to light. But I was quite tenacious at the time and loved the job, and it outweighed the positives outweighed the negatives. So I kind of stuck with it. But it was later on in life I realized when it happened a second time, I was like, okay, this is making me feel exactly the same way that I felt the first time around. The only caveat with that is that it was obviously later on in life, I was working in an HR department where that kind of thing just isn't really acceptable. Yeah. So the second time it happened, it kind of happened 3 or 4 months into my new position, and there were certain signs and certain red flags which I chose to ignore at the time because I had my dream job and was really happy in what I was doing on a day-to-day with my role and responsibilities in my team. So I'd say for the first year I thought, it's got to be me. It must be either the way I'm presenting myself to people, maybe, I'm too shy, you question your own sanity. Yeah. And then eventually observing the culture and the environment and understanding that actually this was something that was cascading down from the top to the bottom. it wasn't just me. I realized, yeah, it is definitely a trend, or there's a bit of a pattern here that's happening, not just with me, but with many other people that had left or were experiencing at the same time. So that was when I started to look at it closely in terms of, okay, what am I in control of, and what can I do to make sure that I can either stop this happening and reset some boundaries, or how can I still enjoy my job and learn to put on a kind of protective shield and just not take it so much to heart as what I had been. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's really good self-analysis, actually. You're obviously pretty aware of yourself. Now, you mentioned how it made you feel. Can you just expand on that a little bit for me, please?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no problem. So it was quite an elite environment that I was working in. So it was the only way I can explain is that it felt like it was the blood that ran through the veins of the organization, in terms of, there wasn't much emotional intelligence or professionalism in the group, in terms of influencing. If one person was trying to knock you down, then you had to sort of watch your back. It made me feel, at the beginning, I was talking to a friend about this a few days ago. In the beginning, I constantly felt anxious, teary, on edge, not good enough. But the positives were that it made me work harder, it made me work slicker, and it made me make sure that I was never in a position where I could mess things up. So there were some benefits. I kind of tried to grow from the negative in that sense. Towards the end, when I really became quite aware that it wasn't me, I decided to, help people that I could that were going through it as well, and sharing my experience with them so that we could support each other. Mm-hmm. I was quite sick at one point, probably the second year in. It started to affect my physical health. I was experiencing really bad stomach pain, anxiety, breathlessness, lethargic in the morning. I just didn't want to get out of bed, and I could never unwind. So I was constantly working in a place of high intense stress.
Yes, absolutely. This is just so common.
Yeah.
I've just described what all of my clients who have experienced something similar, all those symptoms.
It's awful. I mean, I didn't have a relationship for the duration of being there, because I just didn't feel worthy that I had anything to give anyone. I couldn't sleep. So I was constantly on my phone. I remember taking a holiday with a friend and her just saying to me, "Where have you gone? Like, you're constantly checking the work phone. You're on edge." My mum asked me if I'd joined a cult at Christmas, because she just could not understand why I was so obsessed with work. But I just kept thinking, at one point the rug's going to be pulled out beneath me and I'm going to be left with nothing. So yeah, I was performing well, but it was coming from a really bad place of fear rather than productivity. So
wow, that's really interesting. So thank you for sharing. So how long until you were just like, okay, this is what happened for you to change that?
Well, without going into too much detail, because obviously the ins and outs of it are quite sensitive, but the final straw. So it was subtle things to begin with. It was subtle, tripping me up, and then I started. The more I ignored it, like the more you ignore the bully in the playground, the more intelligent the technique becomes to sort of wear you out and get you down. But also, they started to take more risks in terms of putting things down in emails. The final straw came when my role was actually deconstructed and I was made redundant, or ultimately my role was split into several parts. So that was the point where I just thought, gosh, this is because I wasn't fighting back, but I was playing smart in terms of highlighting what was happening and collecting evidence of it. So yeah, it probably took from the August to the February to find a way out, a compromise that suited us both. But yeah, it was a horrible time because I still, I loved that job. I loved what I'd made and what I'd been able to succeed in, despite all of the challenges I was experiencing.
Absolutely, this is so common what you're telling me. So, what advice would you give to somebody who's potentially in a similar situation, who's feeling so anxious because of bullying? And it can be often very subtle, smart bullying that's happening in the workplace. What would you say to them?
It's easy for me to look back now in hindsight and realize what I was doing wrong, because when it's happening to you, you go into yourself. So I became quite introvert, wasn't socializing, wasn't really um, seeing anybody other than people at work. So what I would say is I would get some support early on. I think it's very much the responsibility of HR practitioners to now be trained in recognizing the signs of either burnout or bullying harassment in the workplace, and actually doing something about them. So I think most firms need to have some sort of independent advisor guiding them, either on the employee relations side of things or how to manage, workforce anxiety and stress in the workplace, because it's more common than you think, and you might not even know it's happening to you. So things that have helped me since, and what I would have done differently would have been, holistic sort of care, yoga, mindfulness, meditation, which I did do throughout actually, which did help me grow in confidence and give me some space to sleep. Um, I would use kind of, if you've got a healthcare package that comes with a helpline, an independent helpline, and things like that. There's national bullying lines throughout the UK and the world who will support with either, the legalities of things or just somebody to give you advice.
Yeah.
But personally, I think that there needs to be some sort of independent judicator that kind of brings all of that together, whether it's, the holistic mindfulness side of things, incorporating the anxiety management, or you need to seek that yourself outside of the workplace. So yeah, we're seeing more and more people and workplaces introducing it now because they realise that happiness and mental health and health in general actually just increases performance rather than decreases it. So
Obviously, it's everything that I stand for. So brilliant. So I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your experience. It's really
no, that's good.
for other people to realize that they're not alone, that they're not going mad, that this is really common and you can get help, you can get support, and you just don't have to suffer so that your mental and emotional and physical health is impacted long term. So if you are suffering from any kind of in house bullying, no matter where you work, then make sure you do get support on that. Have you got anything else to say, Amber, to anybody?
No, not really. I think there are, as you've just said, there are independent organisations, and there are organisations like the ones that we both run that can support businesses, internally and externally, guide them through the impact of what these things do to people. But no, thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming on and letting me interview you. Thank you so much.